Claude MacDonald. Claude is a sales culture transformation expert with 25 years of experience and has trained managers, professionals, and employees across Canada, the United States, and Europe. He is also a familiar face at MDI and real experience using AI in client work. So in his business case, I'm really curious, Claude shares what happened when a Canadian client used AI-driven role plays simulations to strengthen, not replace, how sales teams think and perform. And I'm so curious because he said the results were immediate and measurable, but this is what he will show us today. And this session is valuable not because it's about theory, it's about in real work. Please welcome Claude MacDonald.
How many of you manage other people here? Raise your hand. Okay. How many of you are in a commercial kind of role, either directly in sales or customer experience or something close to that? All right. So here's my question to all of you, but obviously to the entire audience, right? Is how many of you or any of the people you work with wake up in the morning with the intent of screwing up? I don't know. Is it 1%, 2%, 0.2%? Think about it. How many? Huh? We agree, it's only you, right? But think about it. It's minimal, right? It's minimal. There's often a very big gap or a small gap or misalignment between execution and intent, right? Intent and execution are not always aligned. And very often it's not a question of intelligence. It's not a question of intent. What I've observed, and there's many trainers in the room, you'll agree with me on this, it's very, very often due to under practicing, right? We don't practice enough. Athletes know this, right? Think of it. Athletes practice way more than they perform. Okay, and I would hypothesize that we in the corporate world are not good corporate athletes. I don't think so. Right? We don't practice enough. I want to show you something that we did with MDI that can actually have a dramatic effect on what I call and what some other people call the practice to play ratio. Right? It's critical in many, many activities. Do we have any musicians in the room? What's the practice to play ratio? What's your practice to play ratio? Like how many hours do you practice versus actually, do you play live? Do you play in a gig somewhere? You sing. How much practice goes into singing? 1 hour of singing means how many hours of work? But it's at least 2. It's at least 1.5, or it's 1-to-1 or 2-to-1. Well, yeah, it's 1-to-1, right? In some instances, it can go way further, right? 10-to-1 in some instances, 5-to-1 in others. Think of Philharmonic orchestra. It's like hours and hours of practice, right? Alpine skiing all the way down to golf. Think about it. The practice to play ratio is high. And what I've observed, salespeople, sales professionals, even leaders, we practice when we play. That's what we do. We practice when we play. We rarely practice before we play to refine and improve execution. And I just want to show you here an image. Anyone familiar with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? No? Okay, cool. The guy on the right here is my son. Okay? He's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He's been doing it for 18 years. He's got 2 bars on his belt. Really proud of him. He's kind of my hero, right? He's into Jiu-Jitsu, but I'm into swimming. And I do long distance swimming. I was preparing a while back for a 12K crossing of a lake, right? and I needed a kayakist. So I go to Charles and I say, Charles, I need a kayakist. He says, why? Well, I said, first for safety, got 12K to do. But I said, it's also a question of giving me the line, right? Giving me the line so I don't have to cite so many times a minute. And the first thing he asked me, he says, Dad, he says, that's great. He says, but when do we practice? I go, well, you don't really need to practice. It's, kayak. Just get on a boat and just follow me, right? And he says, Dad, you perform like you practice. And he said, you know what you're going to do? You're going to put the kayak on the car. We're going to find a lake somewhere, and we're going to practice until we get this right. Okay? And that's what we did. And we practiced for an hour or 2 hours, and we did it a few days in a row. And so for him, practicing until you get it right is not enough. His approach to learning is very different. He says, I'll practice until I can't get it wrong. Right? So can you imagine the level of practice that requires? Like, he'll repeat a movement 1,000 times so that he doesn't go wrong under pressure. Because what happens when we're under pressure? You have to have those sales conversations or those serious conversations with your employees. What happens when you're under pressure? What do you fall back on? What do we fall? Pardon me? Yeah, our patterns, our habits. And if we have not worked on those patterns or habits, we fall back sometimes on not the so good habits, and we end up going, well, that didn't go well, right? Either with the sales call or with a leadership a conversation with an employee, whatever. Right? So one of the things that my son, really proud of this guy, tells me very often, says, Dad, you can't expect results from work you didn't do, right? And you can't be angry at results from work you didn't do. You can't, right? It's just impossible. Although we are sometimes, right? But we can't, right? You got to do the work before. So in order to improve practice-to-play ratio in the workplace, how many of you are trainers here? We got a lot. How many of you use role play? We all do, right? And role play is good, actually. 65% of learners think it's a nice method, right? Way better than lectures or discussions, right? In many cases. But what a lot of learners describe role play as is, listen, give me anxiety, right? Even if I have to perform in little trios or pairs, even worse in front of the group, right? I just came back from Melbourne. I had a guy perform a role play in front of the group. The guy was shaking, right? And it's very anxiety generating, right? So we set out with 2 questions here. Could learners be more likely to value role plays when they feel more realistic and when they are safer, right, than the traditional role plays? And the second question was, could AI help us with that, right? And what I'm going to present to you is a few answers to those questions. And those answers were found in working with MDI. So last year, some of you were at the other hotel, the other place. What is it? Sofitel. And I ran into Rafa, right, who was standing next to the MDI AI labs. And I ran into you, and you showed me the first conversation I ever saw driven by an AI agent. I actually spoke, and it responded to me. I go, whoa. The light came on, right? And I said, can you do that with salespeople? He says, yeah, we can, right? So that's what we did, right? We started working together and produced 2 AI simulations for a client that we had, right? And that client was in the water treatment chemicals industry. They drinking water and wastewater. So we started with 2, and we kind of experimented. I don't know how many iterations we went through, Rafa, but I remember trying to figure out how to give this AI thing a personality, right? And remember, in the first times, it was we thought it was a bit of a bit too tough, right? And we downplayed, we downed the level of difficulty, and it worked out pretty good. And I said, hey, Rafa, we got to find other clients to do this, right? So we did, right? And we found a customer in Calgary who's more in the leadership, it was more of a leadership environment. This was more of a sales environment. So we did 2 more, and we tried them in March. And what I want to show you here is something that we tested over about 50 participants in 3 cities. So it's just not, it's more than just anecdotal. We were able to collect some good data, and I want to share it with you, all right? The first one was on consultative sales skills. And what we did is we put together 2 highly customized simulations. One had to do with cost containment, having a conversation with a client who's trying to squeeze you for every ounce of blood that you have, right? And then when they're done squeezing, what do? You squeeze a little more, right? And that's how we designed the AI agent, right? We wanted it to be difficult for the salesperson. And in fact, when we did it, some people, and most of the people, went down the rabbit hole, right? that we actually designed for them to do. But then they got out of the rabbit hole by doing it over and over and over again, right? So we had them practice the discovery process of the consultative selling process, right? And the objective, these people were very technical people. They still are. And we're doing a full sales academy. We're running year 2 of their sales academy this year. And we're still working on moving from technical conversations to more business savvy conversations. And we found that the AI simulation really helped with that, right? So, and the neat thing about AI is Rafa designed something really cool that gives feedback when it's done, right? So you press the feedback button, and it actually gives you really good quality feedback, right? So people are able, and at first they start to do what? They start to chat with the bot, right? What happens when you chat? You can kind of think about what you're going to say, right? But what happens when you talk to the bot? You have to do it like if it was real, right? So we found that if you use the chat first, and by the way, this is something that the participants taught me, right? They say, oh, it's much easier with the chat. I go, oh, that's a good idea, right? And then we exchange on it, but that's what we did for the first session, right? And we learned from that. And then we went to coaching skills development. And coaching skills development was another 2 customized scenarios, but we used the GROW. Some of you know the GROW chat, the GROW process, right? Goal, reality, and so forth. So we wanted them to master that a little bit better. So we had a leader-employee conversation-driven simulation, and the objective was simply to get better at coaching and asking questions. That was the main goal of the simulation. And the first round was with chat. The second round was with and there was a very specific feedback on not only the quality of the discovery process, but also the quality of the questions they were asking. And same thing with the consultative sales, right? I was in the room, and I was kind of flabbergasted by the reactions of people, right? And so at the end of the session, on day 1, one of the things that we started seeing is people saying, "Hey, this is cool. This is next generation, right?" And this company, for instance, when we started this back in, we started working on I started working with them without the simulations, but introducing AI in the training sessions, doing exercises with AI and so forth in November last year. And when we started with this, it transformed the AI culture within the company within a few weeks. They said, hey, we only have 5-10% of people using AI. He says, now it's 95%. right? They toy with it. They're not advanced like the stuff that we're talking about since this morning, but hey, what a change, right? And so the quantitative results that we were able to measure following this session were kind of interesting. 4.6, 4.7, 4.8, 4.8 on stuff like ability to maintain interest, ability to confidence in applying the learning, recommending this to other colleagues, right? You guys measure these things after sessions, but the questions were related specifically to the AI simulations that we did. We wanted to capture data on that. Well, that's kind of interesting. So this is interesting, but this is even more interesting, right? I did a semantics analysis using AI of all the comments that we got, and we got a lot of comments. And so I highlighted here some of the words that people used, right? Relevant, AI was able to assist, fantastic. So you can see some of the conclusions, right? High practical relevance that they confirm in writing, in just taking the time to write it down. Not seen just as a gimmick. They actually realize that this is real. This is like a real conversation. Some of them even, and I'm cannibalizing a bullet that's coming down the pipe, but some of them even told me after lunch, day 2, they said, listen, you know what we practiced yesterday? I just did it with a client. Right? I said, what do you mean? Well, he says, I had the same type of conversation. We wanted to see if we needed to escalate something with the trade people. And he says, I just applied what I learned yesterday. So there was like instant application. It went beyond the role play impact, in my opinion. High engagement, positive emotion, positive sentiment. And it confirmed that what we're doing here matters, right? The social learning does matter, right? The online learning that works, but face-to-face learning, it's tough to beat, right? So as you can see, there's some nice stuff in the qualitative results. And I thought about sharing my own observations, our own observations as trainers. One of the things we saw was instant attraction. Like when you do role play, how many of you have seen pushback? Like instant pushback, right? Instant. And people just how many of you had to not do role plays because people didn't want to? Right? It happens, right? Didn't happen here, right? Maybe I got lucky, right? Maybe not, but it's instant attraction. I think the newness of it must be related to it, but there's less, people feel less threatened by it, right? Obviously, extremely high engagement. Very rapid progress from chat to voice within, I'd say about 15, 20 minutes, you see the progression, right? And post-session, what was neat is they went back to it and they continued practicing. Now, we only created 2 scenarios for each, and we have 2 more in the oven, almost ready, that are going to be tried next week with the chemistry company, all right, the chemical products company. And my feeling is we're going to get the same kind of reactions. Instant applications, I told you, same-day application. People came to me and said, hey, I just applied this. And culture shift, and especially for the construction company, acceleration of the AI culture shift, right? AI culture shift, yeah. So what we saw was, in my opinion, very, it's not even, I wouldn't say encouraging, it's kind of impressive what we were able to see in terms of results and in terms of engagement. So remember our initial hypothesis. What was it? I'm playing trainer here. What was the initial hypothesis? There's 2 questions, right? Are learners more likely to value role plays when they feel more realistic and safer, right? Well, I just showed you data that does, and not only does it confirm that, but it also confirms that they work better and they feel more relevant and they feel more immediately usable. And my intent is to continue using them, right? But it doesn't happen on its own. There's some work behind this, right? And I thought of summarizing for you a few success conditions if you're thinking about doing this, right? And the first one is make sure you've got AI design capability. I didn't know much about generative AI, and that's why I partnered with MDI, right? And they brought it to life. And all I had to do was collaborate with Rafa and a few other people. Boom, and it happened, right? Make sure whoever you work with knows what they do, right? That's my first piece of advice. Make sure that whatever scenario you develop, it's specific. If it's too general, it's not getting anywhere, because when you get specific, you can be very focused on behaviors that you want to change, that you want to improve. And it helps with the feedback. It helps the application. It helps the AI to generate very specific feedback. We all know as trainers and as managers and as leaders, general feedback is useless, right? It's not actionable. So what we want is, this is cool because you can design it so that it provides that specific feedback. And what I love about it is the calibration, right? In other words, we could use, again, the cost containment one and the other examples I gave to you, and just tweak the level of difficulty. We can raise it as much as we want, right? And we can obviously create additional ones. But my piece of advice, after having gone through this 4 times, is, make sure you work with the right partners and be specific, right? Now, the idea is, what you want to do is bridge the gap between intent and execution. And as my son told me, you perform like you practice, right? So whether you're in the gym practicing or whether you're in the arena, competing, same results. You perform like you practice, okay? And one of the best ways to do that we've found over the last year or so, is to improve the practice-to-play ratio. It's critical. Right? And when I talk about this to all my clients, let's work on the practice-to-play ratio, it makes it easier for us as a company to sell longer-term projects, right? Because, I used to sell to my customers events, like, well, we're going to do 2 days in March, and then, boom, we're gone, right? How's the practice-to-play ratio when we're gone? It's like 0, right? How's the practice-to-play ratio when we stick around, right? And we can actually generate results for clients. So right now, as I was sharing this with Gunther recently, we very rarely sell anymore events. So what I try to do is get my clients into academies, like sales academies, leadership academies, call it whatever you want, but it's a process. And they get in for at least 1 year. And something's going to happen every quarter. This simulation, this AI capability, enhances the whole process, right? And for us, it's been a game changer, okay? Compared to the competition, right? Not a whole lot of my competitors do this yet, right? So I'm ahead of the parade for the moment. I don't think I'm going to stay there very long, right? Because there's all sorts of apps coming up to create those scenarios, right? So that's what I wanted to share with you about our experiment with MDI and the results that it produced. Thank you so much. Go ahead. Yeah, that's why I left about 4 or 5 minutes. Yeah.
Good. Great. So, what would be some difficult conversation as a leader or HR to role play with AI? Any experiences with layoffs or performance talks?
So the one with we did one called should I escalate this? I just want to go back here. Just want to give you there. Is this worth escalating? So this was somebody who didn't know, should I escalate this to a higher level or not? And the leader had to sit down with the employee and have a discussion because this person had waited too long to escalate a situation and it got worse, right? So, and it was a touchy kind of conversation. That's an example, right? Another example was it was around, this is not what we agreed to. So you sit down, you agreed on something, but it goes off track. So, but these may seem simple, but we made them quite difficult for people. So you can, even if the conversation seems simple, in my opinion, you can calibrate it to the level of difficulty that you want. Yeah.
Thank you for that. 2 more questions. How many employees were taking part in the first role plays?
Yeah.
And were asked to give feedback?
So we got, each group was about 25 people. Right? So we had a cohort of 25 people for the first 2 role plays and another one for the other 2. So 50 total. Yeah.
And there comes the second part of this question. Who was involved in the scenario setting at the beginning?
I was and Rafa was, right? Am I correct? Yeah. So I designed the first draft. Actually, I wanted to know, it was my first time, so I needed a kind of a framework to figure out how do I give a personality to this agent, and worked in partnership, and we came up with a good recipe that we're now reusing. Right? We don't have to reinvent the wheel, it's there. Right?
One more. Did your participants run the simulation individually or in group settings?
Did they practice individually
or in group settings? Because it's about so I would assume the question is about feeling safe. Safe is something else when you're in group or when you're alone.
Yeah, funny enough, when we did it in Calgary, I started exposing this to them, and I said, all right, so you pair up and start figuring out the answers or the questions to the. And they all went their own way, and they felt confident enough to interact with the thing and get going. With the chemical company, they actually did it. So we did it both ways. I found it as effective in both instances. So I don't know if that's a good answer.
I also don't know, but I hope whoever asked it, if you want to add something to it.
Yeah. Is that a good answer? Yes, okay, cool. Or not a good answer. Does it answer your question? Yeah, okay, yeah.
Good, because the question is to feel safe. Is it more to be alone with the AI simulation or be in front of others, seeing me answering and seeing me failing?
I think that's the advantage of doing it on your own.
Yeah.
Right? You're just chatting with the bot, and it responds to you. Nobody knows you're failing, but and then you can do it over and over and over again. I can give a simulation. I can start a simulation with a group sometimes, and I'll just interact like 3 minutes with the bot, and I say, "You see how it is? Now you try it." Right? And then they go in and they perform. Really, what's neat is there's no learning curve almost. Right? They just go with this. They know how to chat. They know how to talk. So it's very accessible.
Wow, very impressive.
Anyways,
thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much.